Hi, everybody. Welcome back to episode 6 of my podcast, They're Not Mine. This is a podcast series about life with kids through the eyes of an auntie, amongst other things. Now, let's do a quick previously on recap so everybody's up to speed with where the story is at so far. I have not one but 2 nieces. Annie was born first, Ayla second, both beautifully different. Annie's about 3.5 and our times together are filled with shopping, feeding the ducks and haircuts that haven't quite gone according to plan. Ayla, she's a toddler with tenacity and a fast-growing zest for life. And me, Aunty Tan, I'm in my early 40s and yep, still single. All right, let's get on with the story. I have mentioned before, Ayla was born determined. I mean, she was spunky and tenacious from the get-go. As a toddler, she was fabulous to spend time with. I'd go into her room as she was waking after a nap, and her face would screw up and shriek with delight when she saw you, and then her mouth would break into the biggest gummy grin with maybe 4 or 5 teeth. She was absolutely gorgeous, and she had this infectious giggle that would start at the dark depths of her stomach and just explode as it came out of her body. Ayla and I loved going on adventures. Now, for us, it could be something as simple as walking out the front door, turning right at the gate and waiting to see what we discovered. I think there is a fabulous sense of curiosity when you spend time with kids. For me, it was a wonderful way to wash away the stresses of day-to-day life. I'm telling you, you can find dinosaur prints in rocks. And fairies, they can be found under rose bushes at the bottom of the garden. You've just got to get on your hands and knees and look hard enough. I remember my mum would make flower chains using real flowers for Annie and Ayla, and they would hang them amongst the branches of trees so the fairies had swings to play on at night. Kids remind us of the power of imagination. For Ayla, adventures always started by walking along the front fences of neighbours' homes, like some toddler Zorro not wearing a mask. Thank goodness these were the days where neighbours didn't have 10-foot fences. It didn't matter if the fences were stone or brick or wood, she would clamber up and she would want to do it on her own. And she loved manoeuvring along the fences around pillars, and as she'd approach the end of one property line before another, strategically thinking through how she gets across and even dealing with that dreaded nemesis, the gate. At times I would insist on holding a hand and she would challenge me going, "No, Aunty Tan, I do it, Aunty Tan," like she was some fence-scaling toddler hero. One weekend I was babysitting Ayla while her parents went out for the night, and we got up early the next morning and after breakfast headed out on one of our usual adventures. And straight away up the fence she was, and talking. I mean, this kid could talk underwater. She did not draw breath. She's talk and talk and talk, and she's telling me what flowers she likes and what are her favourite colours, and she's talking away, and I glanced to my left and next minute, nothing. She's fallen backwards over a fence. I mean, literally mid-sentence, gone. I panicked. In fact, it sounds like I panic a lot. Oh, please don't let her have broken her back. Within milliseconds, I had committed myself to be her lifetime carer and I was doing the runs to rehab. I peered over the fence and saw her laying there on her back, eyes wide open, staring up at me, her arms and legs in a star-like position. I calmly said, trying to hide the anxiety in my voice, "Hey, Ayla, does anything hurt in your body?" "No," came this tentative response. And then I asked her to do 2 things which I know were the worst things to ask her to do. I mean, I've done first aid. I know if someone's had a fall, you don't move them in fear of increasing the injury, especially if it's a back or a neck. But I felt I had to cut to the chase to make sure she was all right and assure her she was all right. So I said to her, "Do you think you could move your legs like you're marching for Aunty Tan?" And she did. Then I said, "Do you think you could move your arms like you're flying like a bird?" And she did. And then she started to giggle. And she's flapping her arms like a marching bird, deeply embedded in this beautiful manicured flower bed. So with that, I jump over the fence and I gently lift her up. I check, no cuts, no bruises. I get her to do a wiggle like the Wiggles dance, and she's fine and she's giggling. So we got out of there quick smart before we could be accused of murdering the petunias. No tears, nothing hurt, straight back to our fence line adventures. This time I insisted she hold my hand, but that didn't last for long. Remember, Ayla is determined. Some may even say defiant. And there was one particular day where I couldn't work out whether she was determined or defiant. You see, this was an exciting time. Bindi and Sam were having another baby. The date was booked, and some of us knew the date this time. I did not book any domestic travel. As the time got closer, Bindi asked, would I stay the night and look after Ayla in the morning and then bring her up to hospital in the early afternoon to spend time with her and Sam and the new sibling. I said, I'd love to do that. So that day finally rolled round, and in the morning we had breakfast, we went and played for a little while, gave her a snack, put her down for her morning nap, thinking she'll be down for about an hour and a half. Well, that nap merged into the lunchtime nap, which merged into the early afternoon nap. I couldn't believe this kid. Today was the day she decided to sleep long and hard. I mean, we've been so excitedly talking about the new sibling arriving, and she was excited about what toy she was going to play with the baby. And now she was sleeping like there was no tomorrow. I wondered, was this sleep through her reminding us of who was the boss? We were late. We were so late. I'd walk into her room to check to see if she was stirring, and I could hear her before I saw her in the cot. The kids snored. It sounded like a small lawnmower. Yep, she was dead to the world, backside in the air. Sam and I were texting each other, and he's saying, is she stirring? Is she awake? And I'd say, no, not yet. I couldn't believe this kid. She had picked her sibling's birthday to sleep long and hard and set the toddler's record for napping. I guess we will never know if Ayla intentionally slipped through to remind us of who was boss, or whether she genuinely wanted to get to sleep because she knew there was going to be a new baby in the house and everyone was soon going to be sleep deprived. The decision was made, wake her. Talk about don't poke the bear. Remember at the start of the episode, I told you of stories walking into her room after she's had a nap and her face would screw up with delight as she saw you and she'd break into gummy smiles and it was these giggles and it was fantastic. And not today. Not today, folks. She was cranky. She did not want to be woken up. I don't know what it is about kids. When they sense you're in a hurry, they kick back to an even slower pace. We finally made it to the hospital and Ayla's new sibling is seconds away down the hall. Make that minutes. This was on her time. I had to rein in my usual hospital run with a new baby, like I'd done with Annie and Ayla. I'm with a 20-month-old. We're dawdling. She's in no hurry. It kind of made me wonder what was going through her mind. It was probably the latest Wiggle song we've been playing in the car en route to the hospital. And unlikely a Tony Soprano voiceover saying, I ain't running for nobody. We entered the room and there were some other family members there. And I have to admit, I felt horrible because I knew Sam and Bindi really wanted to have quiet time with Ayla so she could spend time with her new brother and have cuddles before the onslaught of the afternoon visitors. Well, at least Sleeping Beauty was finally awake and she was here to meet her brother. Ayla has the olive complexion and dark hair, whereas this new gorgeous baby boy had the fairest of skin and the wispiest of blonde hair. He, like Ayla, was absolutely gorgeous. I looked at my sister. She looked happy and tired. Sam looked as proud as punch. And Ayla, oh yeah, she was working the room, making sure she got more than her fair share of attention. And me, Aunty Tan, I found a quiet moment to unwrap him and marvel at this beautiful new human life. My new nephew, who in a few days' time would be named Caden Robert. Okay, so here's a few things about Caden. Caden was born a very healthy boy. In fact, you'd be forgiven for thinking he was a little older than he was. Caden knew how to work the range of emotions that babies can leverage. He could break into the most dramatic cry and there'd be tears flowing and then break into a smile, all within 15 seconds flat. crocodile tears and a knowing smile. Did he work us? Oh, you bet he did. Caden was curious. He would watch everything that was going on around him. He would even detach from his mum as he would try and arch his head to see what was happening behind him. And you'd catch his eye and he'd smile back a sly smile. Yeah, you betcha, kid, I've caught you. From a very early age, Caden showed his sensitiveness and his high level of thoughtfulness. When we would walk, he would initiate hand-holding. I remember Mum telling this story when she was looking after him for the day and they were about to head out for a walk. He would have been no more than 2 years of age and he grabbed a hand and then just kissed it. Caden's observations would inform his behaviours. And as he grew into a little boy, his opinions. And he is not afraid to state them. But those stories are for later on. All right, let's do a quick deviation and I'll kind of bring you up to speed on where I'm at in my life. Look, to be honest, at this stage, the newborn nephew, Caden, he's the only person holding my hand because, yep, I'm still single. He was born in the November of 2007. At the start of the year, I actually started a really interesting role, and it was project manager for Earth Hour. Now, for those of you who don't know what it was a symbolic event to create awareness around climate change by asking everyone to turn their lights out for an hour. I worked with a team to really bring on the greater Sydney area, businesses, communities, families, to turn their lights out for 1 hour. I was working out of the threatened species corner of the office. Okay, that might need some context. You see, Earth Hour was a brand that was owned by 3 organisations, one of which was World Wildlife Fund. And I was working out of their offices in Sydney. And my desk was situated under the threatened species sign. And I was surrounded by images of various sharks and other endangered animals. I have to admit, there were moments I'd look at that sign and based on my dating life, I started to wonder if it had some significance. So after several months of preparation, on Saturday, March 31st, 2007, we invited dignitaries and VIPs from all walks of life. We had federal ministers like Peter Garrett, also the front man of Midnight Oil, Earth Hour Ambassador Kate Blanchett, and Mark Ferguson, at that stage was Channel 9 newsreader, to MC this inaugural event as everyone came together to watch the lights of Sydney go out. And as the countdown to 8:30 came, the Sydney area went dark as we watched from the Botanical Gardens surrounded by candlelight. It was tremendous and it was a fabulous success, and Earth Hour continues today. Now, before you imagine me hugging trees, I am quite the corporate chick. And being involved in this project was a deviation from my usual career in sales. I was having an increasing interest in what we can do about climate change. After all, I'd seen the faces of the next generation. How could I not? They were growing up so fast. So while Annie was starting school and learning how to finger paint, Aunty Tan was on adventures with Ayla and Caden, seeing paintings in real life. I'm talking about more professional stuff. Ayla and Caden were starting to stay over and spend weekends with me. Now, at this stage in my life, my home was in Surrey Hills, walking distance to cafes and wine bars and galleries and restaurants. I'm sure really great selling points to a 3 and a 5-year-old. But one weekend they came to stay with me and I decided to take them to one of the art galleries. And as we walked up the street, I said to them, "Do you know what an art gallery is?" "No," they said in unison. I said, "Well, okay, you know how you like to do arts and crafts at home?" "Yes," squealed Ayla. "Not really," says Caden. Okay, so when people do really nice paintings and sculptures, they bring them to places like this so other people can come and look at them and maybe even buy them. "Oh," they said, nodding. Now, it was at this point I knew I had to bring in the 2-worded rule that was synonymous with kids going to an art gallery. Don't touch. So I said to them, "We're going to go in and you can look at everything. You can look at whatever you want, but you don't touch." Okay, deep breath, moment of truth, in we walked. And we faced this explosion of colour. The kids gasped. We were looking at big metal sculptures of chickens, and here were three very untrained art critics taking turns voting which one we liked the best. We wandered into one room and there was brightly coloured paintings of circles and abstract shapes. Now, for an adult standing up close, I could see it was multimedia, it was multidimensional, but for a kid of the height of a 3 or a 5-year-old, it just looked like bright coloured swirls. There's something that always strikes me at an art gallery, that people talk in hushed tones, not kids. So as we're leaving this room of brightly coloured paintings, Ayla announces in a very loud voice, "You know, Aunty Tan, Caden could have done those paintings. He scribbles really well." I couldn't believe this kid. This is the kid that dragged her feet on the day her brother was born. And now she's supporting his artistic prowess, even though everyone is now looking at us. I just smiled at them. And as I started to usher the kids towards the front door, I had them thank the staff for letting them come in. And as I opened the door, again, in a loud voice, Ayla announces, "You know what, Aunty Tanny, I think I'm going to be a painter." I think she meant artist. "Caden," he's sticking to his guns. "No, I'm going to still be a policeman." Our art adventure continued that same day. Sure, we took a break, grabbed coffee, cold drinks and some banana bread, but then we headed round the corner to Brett Whiteley's studio. Now, for those who don't know, Brett Whiteley is a famous artist who had died a number of years prior. As you approach his studio, he has that fabulous sculpture called Almost Once, which is the matchsticks outside the entrance to the art gallery. And as soon as the kids saw them, I'm screaming, "Don't touch," as they raced across the road. They were asking a million questions. Who burnt the sticks, Aunty Tanny? How tall were they? Who blew them out? How come they didn't burn all the way to the ground? Leaving no time for any answers. So before we walked in, I said to them, "Now, again, you guys can look at anything you want, but what's the rule? Don't touch," they said in unison. I said, "That's right." Opened the door and in we walked. And the kids just stood and took it all in. This gallery is beautiful and has massive, large, oversized pieces of art all around the walls. And I let them just wander. Now, yes, there were people wandering around the gallery, and yes, it was quiet. I remember I was standing near Ayla and we were looking at a particular piece of art. And then out of nowhere, I heard Caden's voice. "Hey, Aunty Tan, look at this painting." And I thought, what's he going to say? "This man's got an arm up his bum." Oh, I was mortified. I glanced around the gallery and everybody stopped and looked at me, and then looked at Caden and looked straight back at me. I raced over to him and pulled him away because not only was his comment loud, I was suddenly fearful he was going to touch the painting. I would be up for paying for it. I saw myself losing my house and living in my car. I decided I had to shut down any more loud artistic comments, and I took both the kids up the stairs to the mezzanine level where they could be creative and do their own art. As we walked up the stairs, I have to say that mother wolf in me really started to rear, and I wanted to scream back at them. He has every right to comment. Everybody's got an opinion about art. Just as I reached the mezzanine level, I glanced back at that said artwork with the man with the arm up his bottom. No, I'm pretty sure that wasn't an arm. So, like I said at the start of the series, one of the things I was really excited about being Aunty Tan was the opportunity to teach the kids things. They didn't touch anything. I'm really glad they learnt to express their views of the art they saw. I just wish they'd learn how to read the room. So I have to admit, sharing this story about our visit to the art galleries, I've actually jumped ahead in time because someone else has arrived in our family and I can't wait for you to meet them. But that's for next time. I hope you join me for episode 7 of They're Not Mine.